Rain did not stop the hunt. It rewrote the rules while the hunters were already playing. One minute, water softened the ground and printed every hoof in perfect detail. The next, it filled those tracks, erased the trail, loosened a binding, flooded a crossing, and turned a harmless slope into something determined to break an ankle. The prey was wet. So were the hunters. Only one of them had chosen to carry sharpened wood into this disagreement. Ancient humans hunted in rain because hunger did not accept weather cancellations, but they did not simply march into storms and hope bravery would make them waterproof. They changed when they moved, what they hunted, which weapons they trusted, where they waited, and sometimes whether hunting was worth the risk at all. The surprising part is that rain was not always the enemy. Used correctly, it could become camouflage, a tracking aid, a barrier, and even a temporary map of animal movement. Used badly, it could kill the hunter before the hunter found anything. There is one problem with reconstructing any rainy Stone Age hunt. Archaeology preserves bones, stone points, wooden weapons in rare waterlogged sites, and occasionally footprints. It does not preserve a small label saying, Wednesday afternoon, unpleasant drizzle. No fossil records a cloud, so we cannot identify one spear wound and confidently announce that the attacker was cold, annoyed, and standing in rain. What we can do is combine archaeological evidence for hunting technology with animal behavior, landscape evidence, human physiology, and knowledge documented among recent foraging peoples. That gives us probabilities, not surveillance footage. It also immediately destroys the idea of one universal ancient hunter, a Homo erectus group in warm African woodland, Neanderthals near a cold European lake, and Homo sapiens in a Sri Lankan rainforest faced completely different rain. A tropical downpour could be warm enough to tolerate but violent enough to flood a stream. Cold rain just above freezing could drain body heat with terrifying efficiency. A short shower might improve tracking. 3 wet weeks could damage food stores and turn an entire camp into a damp argument. Their weapons differed too. For most of human prehistory, the central hunting weapon was some version of the spear. The simplest was a sharpened wooden shaft. Later, hunters added stone tips, bone points, bindings, and adhesives. Some spears were thrust at close range. Others could be thrown. Spear throwers eventually increased speed and distance, while bows introduced another mechanical system with its own advantages and its own deep dislike of careless moisture. Rain affected each system differently. A solid wooden spear did not stop being dangerous because it got wet. Its surface became slippery, its shaft could become heavier, and a stone tip attached with plant fiber, sinew, resin, or tar demanded maintenance. But it remained a large pointed object traveling toward an animal, a concept that has survived several technological revolutions. At Schöningen in Germany, archaeologists recovered an extraordinary collection of carefully shaped wooden hunting weapons associated with butchered horses. Updated dating places the main weapon horizon at around 200,000 years ago. The site does not prove those animals were hunted during rain. It proves something more useful. Humans related to Neanderthals could manufacture balanced wooden weapons and cooperate in large game hunting beside a wet landscape long before modern humans entered Europe. These were not panicked apes waving branches. They understood wood selection, shaping, balance, repair, prey, and place. Now put that knowledge beneath a darkening sky. Before the rain became useful, the hunters first had to decide whether leaving camp made sense. Heavy storms reduced visibility, raised rivers, hid predators, and made cliffs, trees, and exposed ridges dangerous. Cold water soaked hair and clothing, replacing trapped insulating air and pulling heat from the body. Wind accelerated the loss. A person could become clumsy before realizing how cold they had become. Clumsiness is inconvenient while threading a needle. It is worse beside an injured bison. Experienced hunters therefore read weather as part of the landscape. They did not forecast pressure systems numerically, but generations of observation could connect cloud direction, wind, shifts, seasonal timing, animal calls, insect behavior, and changes in humidity with approaching conditions. This knowledge was never perfect. Ancient humans were observant, not licensed meteorologists, but a group that repeatedly confused a passing shower with a dangerous storm would eventually contribute less to the teaching tradition. If rain looked brief, hunters could wait beneath an overhang, repair equipment, protect tinder, and leave as it weakened. If the wet season had settled in for months, waiting for good weather was not a strategy. Rain was now normal life. The first major advantage appeared underfoot. Dry ground can be a terrible recording surface. Hooves cross hard soil, stone, leaf litter, or sun-baked grass without leaving an obvious print. Rain softens dust and earth. A deer, horse, pig, or antelope stepping into that surface leaves pressure, shape, direction, and sometimes clues about speed. The trail becomes visible. Fresh tracks have sharp edges. Water may still be seeping into them. Mud displaced by a hoof remains darker than the surrounding ground. A bent plant may hold droplets differently. Dung, hair, browsed leaves, and the smell of disturbed vegetation add information. A skilled tracker does not follow a sequence of perfect cartoon footprints. They reconstruct a moving animal from dozens of small disturbances. Rain can reset that evidence. Old signs blur or disappear, while marks created after the shower remain crisp. That makes the landscape easier to read in one important sense. The hunter knows the surviving trail is recent. A print made after the rain cannot belong to an animal that passed yesterday. For a while, water gives every track a timestamp. Then heavier rain begins filling the depressions. Edges collapse. Runoff draws false lines through the mud. Streams rise across paths. The timestamp deletes itself. This is where popular stories often get tracking backward. Rain did not simply reveal tracks or erase them. It did both, depending on intensity, soil, vegetation, slope, and timing. Light rain on suitable ground could produce excellent sign. A violent downpour on steep terrain could remove almost everything. When the trail vanished, hunters did not become helpless. Following footprints was only one level of tracking. The deeper skill was predicting where the animal wanted to go. Prey needs food, security, rest, and routes through the terrain. Rain alters the locations where those needs can be met. Low areas flood, exposed ridges receive wind, thick vegetation provides cover. Familiar crossings become dangerous. Animals redirect toward higher ground, sheltered woodland, narrow passes, or stable riverbanks. Hunters who knew the landscape could stop chasing the animal's last foot and begin waiting for its next decision. This may have been the most important rainy weather tactic. Hunt the route, not the track. A group could position itself near a game trail squeezed between water and steep ground. One or two hunters approached from downwind or from a direction likely to push prey. Others waited beside the exit. The storm had reduced the number of safe paths, making movement more predictable. Rain turned the landscape into a funnel. Humans were extremely good at becoming the narrow end. The archaeological record contains many examples of hunters using natural features, ravines, marsh edges, lake margins, steep slopes, and later constructed drive lines or traps to restrict prey movement. We should not imagine that every ancient hunt involved a dramatic cliff. Driving an entire herd over a precipice is visually convenient for documentaries, but hunting usually depends on control, not spectacle. A shallow gully can be enough. So can a patch of dense brush, a river bend, or a muddy opening an animal hesitates to cross. The rain could also help hunters approach, although not in the magical way often claimed. Falling water creates background noise. Leaves drip. Branches move. Small sounds from feet and clothing may blend into the environment. Lower light and reduced visibility can make a stationary human harder to detect. But the same noise masks the prey from the hunter. The same poor visibility hides roots, companions, and very large animals with strong opinions about personal space. Scent becomes even more complicated. Animals do not smell humans through a neat, invisible beam. Odor travels in shifting plumes shaped by wind, turbulence, temperature, vegetation, and moisture. Rain can remove some airborne material and wash surfaces, yet high humidity can also help certain odors persist near the ground. Wind direction still matters enormously. A wet hunter approaching from upwind does not become odorless. They become a wet hunter delivering advance notice. So ancient hunters likely used the wind, just as knowledgeable hunters do now. They approached across or downwind, paused when gusts shifted, and exploited terrain that broke sight without trusting the rain to perform miracles. The safest moment was not always during the hardest downpour. Many large animals reduce movement in severe weather, seeking cover and conserving energy. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. Their response varies by species, temperature, habitat, and how long the storm lasts. Once heavy rain weakens, animals may leave shelter to feed or resume travel. That transition creates opportunity. The forest still drips loudly. Light remains low. Fresh prints appear on newly softened ground. The animal is moving again, but the older landscape has been wiped clean. The best rainy hunt may begin when the rain is almost over. Imagine a small group waiting beneath trees 50,000 years ago. They have not spent the storm sprinting heroically through lightning. They have kept a stone-tipped spear dry enough to trust, watched runoff develop, and listened. When the downpour softens, one hunter checks a known trail. A new hoofprint cuts through the washed surface. It is deep at the front. The animal was moving quickly. The track points toward higher ground where the route narrows between rock and saturated brush. The hunters do not need to see the animal yet. They already know something about its problem, and they can arrive before it solves it. Group hunting mattered because close-range weapons demanded dangerous proximity. Experimental work shows that stone-tipped spears can produce broader internal wounds than sharpened wooden shafts, but neither weapon removes the central difficulty. A large animal may remain capable of crushing the person who has just fatally wounded it. Distance is safety. Ancient weapon history is partly the history of purchasing more distance with engineering. Thrown spears, darts launched with spear throwers, and eventually arrows allowed hunters to strike without entering immediate reach. Evidence from Ethiopia suggests that humans may have used stone-tipped javelin-like projectiles more than 279,000 years ago. Later projectile systems became lighter, faster, and more specialized. Rain did not make all projectile weapons useless, but it increased uncertainty. Wet shafts could change mass slightly. Crosswinds and falling water made long shots less attractive. Bindings might swell, slip, or weaken depending on the material. Adhesive systems using resin, tar, ochre mixtures, wax, and fiber were sophisticated, but hunters still inspected them. A loose point transforms an elegant weapon into an expensive method for poking an animal incorrectly. Bows were especially demanding. Strings made from plant fiber, gut, rawhide, or sinew responded differently to moisture, but stretching and loss of tension were serious risks. Bows and strings could be protected beneath covers, clothing, shelters, or waxes and fats. Hunters could carry spare strings. They could also shorten shooting distance and weight. Ancient technology was not primitive because it needed care. Modern technology also stops functioning when wet. It simply displays a small symbol first. In heavy cover, close distance could be more useful than maximum range anyway. Rainforest hunters faced a world where sightlines ended quickly. Archaeological sites in Sri Lanka show that Homo sapiens occupied tropical rainforest environments tens of thousands of years ago, and repeatedly hunted small arboreal mammals such as monkeys and giant squirrels. Some bones carry cut marks and burning, evidence that these animals were processed and eaten rather than merely dying nearby from disappointing tree decisions. That evidence matters because rainforests were once treated as barriers humans entered only after farming. In reality, foragers learned these wet ecosystems deeply. Hunting in them favored knowledge of canopy routes, calls, feeding trees, nesting locations, and seasonal fruiting. Small projectiles, traps, climbing skill, and patient observation could matter more than chasing large herds across open ground. Here, rain was not an event interrupting the hunting system. It was part of the system. People living under seasonal monsoons or frequent tropical storms learned which animals remained active, which moved lower in the canopy, where water pooled. And when rivers offered fish, turtles, shellfish, frogs, or stranded creatures. We should be careful with the word hunt. Prehistoric food acquisition did not respect the modern separation between hunting, fishing, trapping, scavenging, and gathering. If a swollen stream concentrated fish in a side channel, insisting on finding a deer would not demonstrate masculinity. It would demonstrate poor menu planning. Rainy periods encouraged flexibility. Hunters could set snares along narrowed paths, inspect traps more frequently, collect aquatic foods, dig for tubers in softened ground, gather shellfish, or target smaller animals closer to camp. Not every society used every method, and traps made from wood, cord, fiber, and leaves rarely survive archaeologically. Their absence from deep sites cannot be treated as proof that nobody understood the concept of an animal walking through a loop. Traps also shifted labor through time. A spear hunt concentrates effort into one dangerous encounter. A network of snares requires construction, placement, memory, and repeated checking, but can keep working while people repair shelters or process food. Unless the trap catches nothing, then it has become forest decoration. Rain changed the cost of a successful kill as well. Finding and striking an animal was only the opening stage. Hunters had to follow wounded prey, finish the kill, butcher the carcass, protect meat from scavengers, and carry usable parts home. Blood trails behave badly in heavy rain. Water dilutes them and moves them downhill, potentially creating false directions. Yet tracks from a wounded animal may press more deeply or become irregular. Broken vegetation, staggered steps, hair, disturbed mud, and knowledge of where an injured animal seeks cover could replace the disappearing blood. Recovery had to be fast. Carnivores also understood that wounded prey was food. Hyenas, wolves, big cats, and other scavengers did not suspend operations because humans had completed the paperwork. Low visibility made encounters more sudden. A hunting group needed lookouts while others butchered. Stone flakes and hand axes could open hide, separate joints, remove meat, and break bones for marrow. A large carcass was rarely carried whole. Hunters selected high-value parts according to distance, group size, prey condition, danger, and what the camp needed. Meat, fat, organs, hide, tendons, bone, antler, and marrow all had different value. Wet conditions complicated preservation. Cool temperatures could slow bacterial growth, but warmth and humidity accelerated spoilage. Rain contaminated exposed surfaces and made drying difficult. Smoke and heat could preserve some food, but only if fire and shelter were available. The fantasy in which two hunters kill a mammoth and casually drag it home ignores both physics and mammoths. Large game hunting was a logistics project wearing fur. Fire, therefore, belonged to the hunt even when it never entered the hunting ground. A group returning soaked and exhausted needed warmth. Flames provided light for processing, cooked meat, dried equipment, hardened wooden points, softened resin for repairs, and discouraged some predators. Keeping fire alive through rain required planning. Hearths could be placed beneath rock shelters or roofs, protected with windbreaks, and fed with fuel collected before storms. Dead wood found standing or beneath dense cover could remain drier inside than exposed branches. Hunters could split wet wood to reach less saturated material. Dry tinder and embers could be carried in bark, fungus, fiber, shells, or other containers depending on place and period. But there was no universal eternal flame passed unbroken through the Paleolithic. Evidence for fire use varies by time and site. Later prehistoric humans often controlled fire skillfully. Much earlier hominins may have used it less consistently. The important point is not that ancient humans possessed one secret rainproof trick. They built redundancy. More than one hunter knew the route. More than one weapon went out. Fire was sheltered before the storm. Tinder was protected. Camp members not on the hunt gathered other foods, maintained clothing, watched children, prepared fuel, or moved supplies away from rising water. The hunt was never just the person holding the spear. It included the people who made cordage, shaped points, processed hides, taught tracks, carried meat, treated wounds, and remembered where animals crossed during the last wet season. Archaeology and ethnography also warn against imagining that every hunter was male. Women hunt in numerous foraging societies, sometimes deliberately and with specialized strategies, while children often learn by accompanying adults and participating gradually. Skill lived in the group. That mattered because rain magnified mistakes. A sprained ankle on a dry afternoon was serious. The same injury while wet, cold, and separated from camp could become fatal. A shallow stream on departure might be a violent channel by return. A hunter focused on tracks could miss signs of hypothermia in a companion. Sometimes the smartest hunting decision was to abandon the hunt. This does not fit the heroic image, but survival strongly favors people willing to remain alive instead of completing a dramatic scene. If the river rose, visibility collapsed, or body temperature fell, the calories offered by the animal no longer justified the risk. Hunters could return, regroup, and use stored food or lower risk resources. Ancient people probably went hungry after failed hunts. They also planned around failure because no hunting method succeeds every time. Sharing distributed risk. One group might return empty-handed while another found shellfish, plants, eggs, fish, insects, or a small animal. Food sharing converted unpredictable individual success into greater group stability. Rain made that social system more important. It may also have intensified opportunities for scavenging. Storms injured animals, drowned some in floods, trapped others in mud, or left carcasses near waterways. Humans could exploit these deaths if they arrived before dangerous competitors and recognized whether the meat remained safe enough to use. But the popular image of humans cheerfully driving mammoths into bogs during rain needs restraint. Soft ground can impede large prey, yet it can also trap humans, swallow tools, and make carcass recovery nearly impossible. There is archaeological evidence for hunting around wetlands and using difficult terrain, proving that a particular animal was intentionally forced into mud because it was raining is far harder. The rain itself is usually the missing witness. What survives is the intelligence around it. Wooden spears shaped for performance, stone points carrying impact damage, animal bones cut open systematically, camps positioned near routes and resources, small rainforest mammals repeatedly brought into caves, technologies combining stone, wood, fiber, resin, wax, and tar. These remains show hunters capable of adjusting equipment and behavior across radically different environments. They did not defeat rain. They converted it into information. The track says an animal passed after the shower. The flooded hollow says it cannot use the usual route. The wind says which side of the valley is safe to approach. The silence says prey may be sheltering. The first call after the storm says movement has resumed. The returning hunter does not see bad weather. The hunter sees a sequence of changing probabilities. That is the real answer to how ancient humans hunted during rain. They did not rely on a single special weapon, a single technique, or some lost superhuman toughness. They watched what water did to tracks, animals, weapons, rivers, plants, fire, and their own bodies. Then they altered the hunt before the conditions altered them permanently. In light rain, they could track. In heavy rain, they could wait. After rain, they could intercept. In flooded landscapes, they could funnel prey or change targets. In rainforests, they built an entire hunting tradition around wet conditions rather than treating wetness as an emergency. And when hunting became too dangerous, they stopped pretending meat was the only food available. Their greatest weapon was not the spear. It was the ability to switch strategies without needing the world to become convenient first. Picture that small group again as the storm fades. Water falls from branches. One hunter circles toward the wind. Another moves ahead to the narrow path. A third waits near higher ground with a spear held low. Nobody speaks. They do not need to. The animal steps from cover. It has survived the cold, the noise, and the flooded trail. It chooses the safest remaining route. That route is exactly where the humans expected it to be. The rain did not ruin the hunt. It had already decided where the hunt would happen.